Ladies and gentlemen, at the time of recording this video, it's currently December 25th, 2023 here in New York City. So, I would like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. And if you're not celebrating Christmas, or if it's already December 26th where you're watching in the world, or you're watching in 2024 and beyond, well, hope you have a good holiday season overall, sending nothing but health, happiness, and all that good stuff. Tons of chess elo to you and your loved ones, and your pets, and even your enemies. Now, here in the United States, it's tradition on Christmas Day to avoid your family at all costs and minimize social interactions. On a serious note, there's a lot of sporting events on television. Basketball, football, like the one you throw, not the one you kick for whatever reason. Now, to continue that tradition, I'm going to show you a sporting event. I'm going to show you Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura from Title Tuesday, which recently concluded. And Magnus and Hikaru, when they play in Title Tuesday, I know they're thinking about this YouTube channel because they disrespect each other so viciously. It's a spectacle. I mean, the two of them play chess like nobody should play chess ever. And I'm going to show you the game that they played recently because it was an utter catastrophe. It was ridiculous, but it was also incredible to witness. It's also Christmas. All courses are 40% off. Link is in the description. Get yourself a present. Get someone you love or hate a present. Get something for yourself. Enjoy the holidays. Hope you're all doing well. Here we go. E4. Oh, and speaking of Christmas presents, I got a book here on the table. Over 50,000 of these have been purchased since the book came out October 24th. So if you got it for yourself or you got it for somebody you know, I mean, just really thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's just unbelievable to see how big the book is trending, both in the UK, US, multiple other language editions as well. And here is the position after one move from each side. E4, A6. Now, recently, Hikaru has been playing A3 against Magnus in the opening, which is a move. I mean, it's a legal move. And then, you know, Magnus will play something like E5. Or sometimes Magnus will play also A6 or G6. But this time Hikaru goes for a regular move and Magnus plays A6. Now, normally, of course, for white to take the center with, if you have an opportunity to put two pawns in the center of the board, you should. Generally here, Magnus and Hikaru, when they're playing like this, will put one of these pawns in the center, and then they're going to try to fight for the center. They're just going to try to justify this move as like a first move that's disrespectful. But then after that, you know, they're going to play normally. No. What Magnus does in this game should not be replicated. Frankly, it shouldn't even be observed. Magnus plays knight to c6. And as early as the second move of the game review is calling him an idiot. This is called the St. George woodchuck variation. I don't think that's real. I think somebody made that up. And the point is that if you're going to put pieces in the center that can be attacked by pawns, it's a very dangerous game you're playing, especially if the side is not overextending. For example, now Magnus could go knight e5, and Hikaru could go f4, and then knight g6. But if you overpress, black just gets the knight comfortably in the center, then defends it, and then is going to try to break apart white's position. So with white, you've got to stop your troops a little bit early. Now, Magnus here plays not knight e5, and not even knight b8 undeveloping to the home square. This bozo plays knight a7. I mean, if you have a role model in chess and you watch them do this, that's crazy. That's crazy. This man just played a6, knight c6, and camps out behind the pawn. That's nuts. Now, Hikaru just takes as much space as possible. Puts three pawns in the center. He wants his knights to go behind the pawns, right? Now, the thing is, this is not completely lost. It's pretty bad for black, but watch as Magnus makes this work, because half his name is literally magic, right? Technically, the word magic, it's 3/4 in his name. 3/5, not 3/4. 3/5. 60% of the word magic is in Magnus's name. So C4, and now he plays not a center pawn move, not E6, trying to fight against the center like this, or E5. No, this dude plays B5. 4 moves by Magnus have been made. 3 of them are given dubious move. That's dubious, and that's dubious as well. That's nuts. Now, if white takes, you justify black's play. Black is going to take back with the pawn. Then he's probably going to attack on the queen side. He's going to play c6, e6, and slowly he's going to get out of the position. Now, after b5, white can also ignore this completely because you're defended. You can just play knight f3, which is the best move, or knight c3. You are a little bit concerned about this pawn just in the future, just kind of lurking over there. Hikaru immediately makes a mistake. And now the computer here is at a high depth. It thinks that the position's plus 1.6. It thinks that white has a very big advantage, but it's actually not the stupidest opening in the world because black is going to just start striking at these pawns. And like I said, if you overextend with white, suddenly you're going to get slapped around. And then black is going to put a bishop out, and he's going to put a knight out, and he's going to start taking at your center. And you thought you had a big advantage, but you don't. Hikaru plays c5, which is a mistake. And now Magnus has a well-timed strike at 2 pawns in white's center, and somehow his opening doesn't look entirely idiotic. Okay? e6. Hikaru plays bishop to e3, a natural developing move defending the pawn on c5. Magnus plays knight f6. He's not taking. There's just tension on the white center. All the pawns that white put out, now white has to take accountability for. If white plays knight c3, he's going to get hit with this move b4. That stupid pawn that walked out there because of this completely absurd woodchuck defense. How many chucks can a Magnus chuck if a woodchuck could chuck? I'm just going to shut up, okay? b4 is going to be on the board. So Hikaru defends his pawns with his queen. That's a dangerous game you're playing, okay? Because the fact that the queen has to babysit, you know, that's not really... I mean, the queen's very valuable and very powerful, and the queen's got to be very careful. Now Magnus takes, Hikaru takes, and Magnus plays d6, but d6 is a crazy move because he's opening his bishop, but what about his knight? His knight is completely locked away. It doesn't have any moves now. It can't go here. It can't eat its own pawn. You can't push the pawn because I'm going to take. Well, it turns out Magnus had the right plan all along. And now all Magnus has to do is actually just go g6, bishop g7, and castle. And he's just vibing. He is completely vibing. Vibing is, in fact, the official evaluation of the computer. Like, black's just going to castle and have absolutely no problems, and at some point bring this knight back into the game. Instead of that, like I said, these guys are out for maximum disrespect against each other. So here comes knight g4. Knight g4, defended by the bishop, looking to get Hikaru's bishop, and then develop the bishop like this to this diagonal, not to play g6, bishop g7. Magnus getting provocative very early in this game. Now, computer really wants Hikaru to play a4, but Hikaru doesn't feel comfortable sabotaging even more development, so he plays knight c3, which is also given a fat, dubious mark by the computer, but the computer can, you know, go drink some eggnog. Bishop e7 played by Magnus. You cannot take this pawn. This is so provocative by Magnus, but you just can't take it because your queen is trapped. What? How does... The queen is just completely trapped. Black has... whatever that is, all right? And a queen is trapped. So bishop e7. Now Hikaru should probably play long castle or knight f3, but he plays bishop to f4. He tries to get the bishop out of the way. He says, you know what, Magnus? You don't want my knight? No problem. Magnus is like, I never wanted your knight anyway, bozo. Castles. And suddenly, you're like, wait a second. Remember I told you in the beginning of the game, like, white pushed all these pawns out, but how do we know that he's not overextending? Yeah, we don't know. In fact, these pawns are definitely overextended, and they're going to be targets for these pieces, and they're not actually restricting that much space, because once black moves the bishop, he's going to be able to get the knight in the game very quickly. He's going to zigzag it or come this way. So suddenly Hikaru is just in very difficult shape. Here comes Magnus with the bishop. Here comes Magnus with the rook on the straightaway. He's got the knight playing, the bishop playing, the rook playing, the bishop's getting out, this pawn's coming, and knight b5 is on the way as well. Hikaru blocks the check. Magnus doesn't give him any time to relax. Pawn to b4. Activating that goofy knight. The goofy knight is coming to b5. Oh my goodness. Great pressure here by Magnus. Pressure with the knight, pressure with the bishop. Position is equal. Hikaru's knight goes back to d1 because he wants to cover up. He wants to block the file, and he didn't feel comfortable putting the knight on the edge of the board. Who can blame him? Who can blame him? The knight has no return home, right? Black is just going to play rook b8, bishop f5, knight b5. Like, it's a very uncomfortable position. So he plays the knight to d1, and here comes Magnus's knight. The knight that went c6, a7. is now on b5, and somehow the best player in the world is making it work from all three sides. Finally, oh, never mind. I was gonna say, finally it's time to castle, but clearly Hikaru didn't like something about this move. It's kind of hard to understand what, though. Like, maybe he didn't exactly see a plan, but I thought, but he goes h3. He decides, I need to play h3 now. I need to kick Magnus's knight out of the center, but Magnus's knight goes to e5, and now we have a problem. We have a problem because you can't just trade. Why not? Because DE, and you've overextended. You've overextended. That pawn is not an asset. I'm going to play bishop f5. By the time you castle, I'm playing knight d4, and now nobody can protect the pawn. We can chop, and you can try to defend it, but I'm going to win that pawn. I'm going to play bishop e4. Your knight can't actually get out. Crazy. This is hanging, but black is going to win both these pawns. The two pawns, Hikaru marched into Magnus's position because Magnus didn't take the center. So it's kind of absurd. Knight e5, knight to e3 is a mistake. Magnus takes on f3, puts the knight on d4 anyway, and is just better. He's just better. May I remind you, his opening 4 moves look like this. b5. That is what you can play as a top player in the world against Hikaru Nakamura, 3240 rated, and you could play like this, and by the 15th move of the game, somehow you maneuver, and I mean, it's bogus how these guys do this. Knight b5. Sorry, knight d4. This is the position. Hikaru has to play bishop d1, and now it's very instructive how Magnus maneuvers his pieces, because Hikaru just wants to go here. So really, there is only one move in this entire position for black that creates what's called an initiative. An initiative is a series of moves in chess where you create threats while also improving your position in the future, for the future. So how do you do that here? Rook e4. What a move. Putting the rook directly in the center and attacking white's bishop, which seems easy enough to defend, but the second the bishop leaves the diagonal, black is just going to strike at this knight. So black is going to play knight f5 and bishop g5, and black is defending b4. So rook e4 attacks, it protect, it attack, and most importantly, it eat snack. That's what it's going to do. So Hikaru plays here, which is a losing mistake. Apparently, he had to go bishop h2. Apparently, there was a difference between these two moves, because now the knight no longer hits the bishop, right? That's, I guess, what the idea is. But, I mean, Magnus would have walked in and tried to eat on a lot of stuff. Bishop g3, knight f5 by Magnus, and now Magnus is completely winning if he plays bishop g5 and sacrifices the rook. Really? Like this? And what about bishop g1? Well, apparently, bishop f5... and then bishop h4, and apparently then knight g2, and you get out. Like king f1, knight f4, and black is completely winning. So Magnus has to coordinate his 3 pieces, sacrifice the rook. That's tough. That is tough to play. You trap your own rook, and then this is apparently completely winning for black, because white can't get off the back rank. All of white's pieces are stuck. The bishop is in the corner. He has no threats. Magnus is not stockfish, though, so he goes here. Now Hikaru's defending himself. Now Magnus should have stayed patient and played a5 and brought in the sniper from the edge of the board. a5, very, very well-timed move. If knight takes f5, there's bishop f5, there's a threat to the queen. And if white castles, there's bishop d3, which is picking up material. Not to mention rook d5 is a free pawn anytime you want it. But instead of that, Magnus goes for knight takes. Hikaru plays f takes, rook d5, and now he castles. So Hikaru's just a clean pawn down. Clean pawn down after that absolutely goofy opening. Okay. The best plan for black, queen e7, put the rook there, slowly get the bishop out, get the rook out as well. Hikaru plays, Magnus plays rook f5. Okay, he doesn't play rook c5, plays rook f5. Makes sense. He's up a pawn, so he wants to trade pieces. Plays rook f5. Now Hikaru doesn't take the rook, he wants his rook taken, and he wants it replaced with the rook, so he goes here, with a little bit of pressure on black's king. All right, Magnus is smart, he's up material, he trades. Here comes queen e7. Now, Hikaru's down a pawn, he's down on time, and he's got a pretty bad position overall. He's got he's got to defend himself by playing only moves. He does. He absolutely does. Plays rook f4. That is the only move. Why is that the only move? All you're doing is attacking a pawn. Why can't black just play a5? He can. That's still the best move, though. The idea is to put the rook on e4 and create counterplay onto black's back rank. So you can do that with bishop d5. You can do that with queen d3, which the computer likes a little bit less. The computer likes bishop d5. If bishop e6, you pin. That's what you do. But that's the idea. Rook f4, queen d3, and you put the rook like this. Hikaru immediately spots that he has to create counterplay on the e-file. Now, Magnus can play d5. Magnus is like, bro, I'm 2 pawns up. I'm 2 pawns up. I'm straight up 2 pawns. I am completely winning. After playing a goofy opening like that. Hikaru plays the best move, queen b5. Down 15 seconds on the clock, but looking to apply some pressure. Maybe sneak into b7. This pawn is actually proving to be more of an asset now in the long term, as it's 2 squares away from queening. And in most endgames, white can even sack to try to promote. All right? Magnus plays bishop c3. Hikaru plays bishop f4. It is now officially -2. Black is up 2 pawns, and it's -2. So the advantage is completely justified. How do you convert that? Apparently a4. You cannot take this with the bishop because d5 and the rook is trapped. So since you can't do that, bishop takes, pawn takes, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. I mean, queen b7, black can already begin things like b3. You just got to not hang your rook, obviously. But let's say you play like queen f8, rook e6, there's b3. There's b3, there's a3. I mean, you are not stopping this pawn. And Hikaru does not have the firepower to fight back when a full queen lands on a1. So maybe that is the way to do it. But instead of that, Magnus doesn't play a4. He turns his attention to the center. And all of a sudden, Hikaru just takes the pawn on a5. What? What is going on? Hikaru takes the pawn on a5. Magnus could just played a4. I mean, I'm sure it was complicated. But the pawn is falling. And now the only move here that the computer recommends is like queen d8, you know, trying to start trading these pieces. Magnus plays h6, which makes sense. Hikaru plays a3. Oh my goodness. He's going to get rid of these pawns. Now Hikaru's only 1 pawn down, and we're going to an endgame which he's going to try to defend. Magnus plays queen d8. He spends 40 seconds. 40 seconds realizing, wait a minute, I can't take because my bishop is going to hang. And I can't take that because my queen is hanging. So what do I do? Plays queen d8. He's down to 33 seconds. Clearly a bit rattled. Now Hikaru's going to take, and then he's going to take. So Magnus goes from playing a completely ridiculous opening, then getting a completely winning position, to messing it up slightly, to bishop takes e6, rook e6, rook e6, rook e6. Excuse me, pawn e6, ab. And now Hikaru is playing for the win against Magnus, from 2 pawns down to 2 pawns up. I don't know how these guys managed to do it. How they managed to create these completely insane games constantly. And now Magnus plays e5, and officially, Hikaru is definitely playing for a win. These pawns are very annoying. So for example, bishop g3, let's just say here, 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 here. White has pretty decent winning chances. Not at this level, but like this is a very tough position for black at the intermediate level. If the white king manages to get forward, there are constantly threats of breaking apart those pawns. It's a very tough endgame. So bishop g3, and Magnus loses. Magnus loses the game to Hikaru with the move king to h7. Can you find the move that would beat Magnus Carlsen in this position? Because I'll tell you right now, Hikaru didn't find it. Hikaru centralized his queen in this position and then immediately realized what he had missed. He played queen d5, threatening a fork and also threatening bishop b4, queen e4 check. Oh, queen e4 check, right? If bishop b4, which would pick up the bishop. But Hikaru completely overlooked, and he immediately spotted it after playing queen d5. He has this. And the bishop is trapped. The bishop cannot go anywhere except there, where it will be forked. Now, queen a3 is like a 1800 level tactic. If you just put this position on the board and say white to move and win, you know, we find this move. And then queen g5, you just have to see this. So queen a3, queen g5, you just have to slide the bishop out of the way. Apparently this is winning too, this endgame, because of the same reason I told you. Because white can just sneak through. There might be queen b1 check. So actually after this, you might need to go queen c1 first and then b6. Point stands. For example, queen e8, b6, like this, and you're completely winning. So, yeah, queen a3. But instead of that, queen here. And now Magnus gets out of the way, and you're not trapping this bishop anytime soon. If you try to come back, the bishop will be able to run away. For example, queen b3, bishop d2. This is no longer, right? You try to trap the bishop, I can take with check, blah, blah, blah. So queen d5, and Hikaru misses the chance and plays b5. And now Magnus plays queen b8 and is able to create a barrier, create a barrier on the dark squares. But the game is not over. The game is not over. White is still playing this for a win. e4. Magnus tries to create a blockade. Still, there is an outside chance that white could potentially break through. Magnus is trying to create a fortress. Hikaru takes on b6. Queen b6. King f1. Maybe the white king is going to go on a journey. For example, if the white king can successfully get to d7 like this, I understand I'm like walking through a checkmate, but this, oh, this is winning. Because the king is so close, you'll just get in there and take the pawn. But as we saw, by the time you walk, like you're going to get mated. So you can't just go on a walk. You've got to be very, very careful. Magnus plays queen e3, both guys with limited time on the clock. Queen d3 check. Hikaru chucks a pawn completely to try to pick up c7, and then he's going to be completely winning. But it's very unfortunate because the king is stuck. The white king is actually just straight up stuck in a vortex. And even though c7 can fall, which Magnus is happy to give away, he saves the day with less than 10 seconds on his clock with queen f4 check and queen f1. And Hikaru can make a run for it, but then there's queen e3, and then he can make a run for it this way again, but then there's queen f4. Now he probably should have tried, is what he should have done, but you're never actually escaping. I can even take with check, but I'm not going to. So white is completely stuck. There is no way white can escape these checks. Check, 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 and it's perpetual, and the players agree to a draw. I don't know how Hikaru and Magnus constantly manage to outdo each other every single week. Like, the fact that Magnus can play this absolute nonsense. By the way, I'm going to start playing this. I'm going to play this idiotic opening, and I'm going to see how I do. Just for fun. I'm going to try 10 games of Magnus's goofy A6, B5, Knight C, and I'm going to see how I fare in it. And then he gets a completely winning position, completely outmaneuvers, right? Look at this, puts the knight promptly on the B and just gets this roaring initiative, picks up a pawn. He has a 2-pawn advantage. He's just cleanly up 2 pawns, but Hikaru never stops defending. He never stops defending. He applies pressure, and Magnus moves his rook out of the way and just hangs his a-pawn. And then not only does he hang his pawn, he gets a completely losing position because of queen a3. Crazy. The Christmas drama is incredible. But, winning and losing and ultimately drawing a game is life. And unfortunately today, there was no winner, there was no loser. On the bright side, though, tomorrow, like I said, World Rapid and Blitz Championships begin in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. I don't know if I said that. I don't remember what I said 22 minutes ago in the intro of this video. The World Rapid and Blitz Championships begin, and that's exciting. So I will be covering those. If you're watching this at some point in the future, then, well, hope you're having a wonderful day. All courses 40% off for the holiday season. And that's all I have for you today. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Get out of here.